status as an ambassador in 2 different countries, he also claims to be God's divine leader on earth. He has also made public claims to be the single appointed global ambassador of the one true Church of God, a position which he claims to have inherited from the former worldwide Church of God leader, Herbert W. Armstrong, who also claimed to be God's ambassador on earth and the modern-day Elijah, a position similar to Mr. Jackson's own self-claimed incarnation as a modern-day Joseph. Jackson, an American native born to several generations of U.S. citizens or slaves, claims to be a descendant of a king of West Africa and the rightful sole heir of a huge swath of West Africa encompassing the Gambia, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, 2 other countries in which Jackson tried unsuccessfully to rise to power, allegedly resulting in his general exile from those 2 places. After 2 failed attempts to set up a power base using agriculture, it seems he may now be shifting his strategy towards the manipulation of economics. In the report released last week, Jackson made reference to his first diplomatic mission, which in fact he has previously admitted had not actually been formally endorsed by the State Departments of either the Gambia, Canada, or the United States. That trip further resulted in a somewhat public humiliation when the U.S. government refused to acknowledge him at all, causing him to cancel a supposed U.S. leg of the trip, during which he was supposed to meet with top leaders in Washington, D.C. He claimed that the U.S. government had refused to properly acknowledge and formally invite him, which insulted his position of authority and meant that they would have to come begging later. This writer spent over 14 days covering the Canada trip as part of Jackson's personal entourage and was witness to a variety of dishonest claims, attempts to commit frauds, as well as a fully pre-planned murder plot to eliminate a former member of Jackson's organization. While in Canada, Jackson used multiple false claims and credentials to attempt to defraud private industry leaders to investing in massive infrastructure programs in the Gambia, including a giant floating deepwater seaport. Among those targeted by Jackson were shipping magnate Blair McKeel and equipment scrap trader Bill Van Ravensway. The murder plot was to occur at Ravensway's scrapyard on Highway 56 in Canfield, Ontario. Ravensway, Jackson's primary host and strategic partner in his own words, was during a portion of that trip incarcerated on gun charges, stemming charges levied against him as the result of Project Heist, a 5-month OPP investigation focusing on WG equipment owned by Van Ravensway. This investigation charged that Van Ravensway and his son Trevor ran a high-demand company that shipped stolen vehicles and parts out of Canada. Van Ravensway faces a total of 38 charges over the exports, altered vehicle identification numbers, forgery, and possession of a prohibited weapon. Jackson, who has also been conclusively linked to several frauds including false credentials, investment scams, and even frauds as wild as involvement with a false branch of the Knights of Malta, which was responsible for numerous frauds and subject to several criminal investigations. And among the known deceptions of Ambassador Apostle Dr. Kenneth T. Jackson are a fantastical false CV, which claims him to be a king, diplomat, ambassador, apostle, Indian chieftain, special attorney, holistic doctor, dentist, university president, and much more. The education listed on his CV include 2 defunct diploma mills in the University of Maryland of College Park, which has adamantly denied that he ever attended, including issuing a formal letter of denial. The question on everyone's mind now is, what is the real relationship between President Jammeh and Kenneth T. Jackson Sr.? Why is he claiming to be ambassador at large? Why is the state propaganda rag endorsing it? And lastly, how many more victims will be left in the wake of this man? Even as his religious cult following and making Georgia reels from the blows of the criminal trial of Jackson's number 3 administrator for aggravated child molestation, which extends to his own son, Smoke Jackson, and while multiple families struggle to piece together lives broken and young girls forever scarred by the sadistic abuses of Ambassador Dr. Kenneth T. Jackson Sr. and his organization, he is still at his old games, playing God with politics and further complicating geopolitical factors already at play in West Africa and the world.
Now this is the one and only Amo Rago FM playing you the best in
Kora, Ndaga, Seurba, Soca, Afrofusion, Reggae, Dancehall, Rocksteady, Soul, Jazz, and Dancehall.
Alongside DJ Bubba is. Tune in and don't stop tuning.
Is Gambia on a path to turmoil? After conceding defeat, President Yahya Jammeh has now changed his mind and is rejecting the result of the presidential election. What are the hurdles to a smooth transition of power? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Adrian Finnegan. He's reputed to be one of the world's most repressive and eccentric leaders who vowed to rule Gambia for 1 billion years, if God willed. Following the presidential election 10 days ago, Yahya Jammeh shocked many by accepting defeat to his rival Adama Barrow. Jammeh's conciliation was seen as the start of a new era of democracy in the smallest nation in mainland Africa. Now, though, it appears that Jammeh won't be relinquishing power after all. Will his demand for a new election mean turmoil for the country, and how can a peaceful transfer of power be achieved? Those questions we'll be putting to our guests right after our report from Mohammed Val.
1 week after his acceptance of defeat, Gambian President Yahya Jammeh now says the election was rigged and the vote should be repeated.
I hereby announce to you Gambians my total rejection of the electoral results and thereby annulling the elections in its entirety, and until we will go back to the polls, because I want to make sure that every Gambian has voted.
The announcement drew prompt condemnation from the US government and defiance from the president-elect.
The outgoing president has no constitutional authority to reject the result of the election and order for fresh election to be held. The IEC is the only competent authority to announce the results of election and declare a winner. It was already done so, and I am now the president-elect.
Barrow has called on his supporters to remain calm and to prepare for his inauguration in January. And he wants Jammeh to allow a smooth transfer of power.
I urge him to change his current position and accept the verdict of the people in good faith for the sake of the Gambia, our homeland.
Jammeh is a former military officer who has ruled the Gambia for 22 years. During his time in office, political opponents have disappeared or have been thrown in jail without trial. The country has suffered from economic and political isolation. Jammeh has won all the previous elections his government organized. So it surprised many around the world when he conceded defeat last week in the recent election. His rival Adama Barrow won 45.5% of the vote, while he got 36.7%.
It depends on your calendar. You are the president-elect now. I'm the outgoing president. So you give us time.
For his people and those who know him, pictures of him on the phone congratulating his rival looked promising.
I will never rule this country without your mandate since we started elections. And I will never cheat or dispute the elections, because this is the most transparent, rig-proof elections in the whole world.
Too good to be true was perhaps how Gambians really felt at the time, but they had suppressed it in the hope they might be wrong. They took to the streets to celebrate what appeared to be one of the most peaceful transitions of power in Africa. But with Jammeh now rejecting the very same results he accepted last week, uncertainty and despair will likely return. His move is seen as a possible reaction to demands by some in the opposition that he should be tried for crimes he may have committed while in power. Perhaps more than ever before, the Gambia is on the brink of a dangerous phase of its modern history. Mohammed Val, Al Jazeera.
Well, Yahya Jammeh seized power in a coup in 1994. The devout Muslim claimed to be able to cure AIDS with prayer, a concoction of herbs and a banana. He also claimed to be able to cure female infertility and called for homosexuals to be beheaded. Jammeh is notorious for jailing his political opponents. He won 4 multi-party elections before this month's surprise defeat. The regional body, the Economic Community of West African States, or ECOWAS, refused to endorse his election victory in 2011. ECOWAS said that voters and the opposition had suffered what it called repression and intimidation. 3 years ago, Jammeh withdrew Gambia from the Commonwealth, which was pushing for reforms. Loss of membership further isolated the small African country internationally. Human rights groups criticized Jammeh's treatment of journalists. Gambians cast their votes in this latest election during a media blackout. All right, let's get the thoughts of our guests for today. Joining us from the Gambian capital, Banjul, is Halifa Sallah, spokesperson for the President-elect, Adama Barrow. From Washington, D.C., we're joined by Jeffrey Smith, Executive Director of Vanguard Africa. And from London, Murtala Toure, who's an independent analyst on West Africa. He's also a former senior analyst at IHS. Gentlemen, welcome to all of you. Halifa Sallah, we'll start with you. The video isn't particularly great on our Skype link, but we can hear you. What's the President-elect's view of Jammeh's rejection of the election result?
He did issue a statement yesterday indicating very clearly the process that this country has gone through to come up with the results of the 1st December 2016 presidential elections. It is very clear that under the Gambian constitution, a person elected has a 5-year term, and 3 months before the end of that term, we should have elections. And elections has taken place. The only authority responsible for announcing the results is the Independent Electoral Commission. They have done that, and President-elect Barrow is determined to be the victor of the elections. Fortunately...
So, am I right, just to clear something up, am I right in thinking that the current president, the incumbent, does have the right to contest the election result?
Well, what is very clear is that once an election result is declared, that stands. The only other authority that can look into the validity of the elections is the Supreme Court, which means that you have to file an election petition. What is abundantly clear is his announcement rejecting the results is immaterial, in the sense that you can accept or reject results of an election, but the results stand, unless it is questioned before the courts. So his pronouncement that the results were invalid and that we will have future elections has no legal foundation, no constitutional foundation. And that's precisely what President-elect Barrow said, that his pronouncement is just an opinion, has no legal foundation. He is President-elect. Jammeh should serve, outgoing President Jammeh should serve the rest of his term, and in January he is going to assume office as the President of the Republic of the Gambia. It falls on all members of the public to go about their business and leave the outgoing President Jammeh to serve his term and focus their attention on the day of inauguration of the President-elect.
Right. Just one more question, sir. President Jammeh said that a thorough investigation had been conducted since the poll. I mean, how they could have done that in 10 or so days, I don't know, 9 days, in which serious and unacceptable abnormalities in the electoral process had transpired. Could he be right? Do you think, is there any chance that the poll could have been fundamentally flawed?
Well, he has already accepted the results as the verdict of the people and the verdict of God. If he now questions it, well, he is the one, he who asserts must prove. He is the one who should go to the courts and prove his case. He cannot be judge, jury, and complainant at the same time. So I believe that he is someone who should go through the court if he is aggrieved. What is important is to know that such assertions over the air has no legal foundation. It should not be made in the first place. He knows where to go if he wants to question the validity of results of elections. As it stands, what we know is that President-elect Barrow is the President-elect of the Gambia, and that has been affirmed by the Independent Electoral Commission, and that cannot be questioned by any other authority except to the courts.
So thank you for being with us on Inside Story. We'll leave it there because the audio and video quality from Banjul are not particularly great. Halifa Sallah, they're the spokesman for the President-elect Adama Barrow. Let's bring in Jeffrey Smith, then in Washington, D.C., Executive Director of Vanguard Africa. Jeffrey, what do you think has happened? What can we read into Jammeh's acceptance of defeat and then, several days later, his rejection? What do you think has happened?
Well, unfortunately, this turn of events in the Gambia did not surprise many. For many observers of the Gambia, and certainly Gambians themselves, they become accustomed to Yahya Jammeh's erratic behavior over the course of 22 years while he has been in power. I think as